Okay, in this video, we are going to do a brief introduction to Photoshop, and then we're going to start our first Photoshop project, which is sample lines, which is pretty simple. So what you're going to do is I'm going to go down here to the dock, and I'm going to look for Photoshop CS4, blue square that says PS in the middle of it. And you click it like so. Photoshop will open up. You'll see here some various tools that we're going to talk about that we're going to use when we do a Photoshop project today. Let's start over here on the left-hand side is our basic toolbar. Up here at the very top is what's called the Move tool, and you can get this tool by hitting the letter V on your keyboard. Anytime you want to move something around in Photoshop, you want to use the Move tool. Anytime you're having any sort of a problem, for some reason Photoshop is not working right, chances are if you click the Move tool, it might fix or kind of reset whatever issue it is you're having. So the Move tool is very important. I'm going to skip a few here because we're not going to use all the tools today. Down here is the Brush tool. The Brush tool can also be accessed by hitting B, the letter B, on your keyboard. You will notice when I hit the Brush tool that it changes what I get up here along the top. Okay, I get a bunch of new options. Watch this top bar. I'll click the Move tool, and look, I get different tools. Then when I click the Brush tool, now I get a different set up here. You want to be aware that if you want to change brushes, anytime you want to change brushes, you want to click right on this little drop down right here. And you get this window right here, which is where you'll go to pick a new brush. Maybe I want drippy water or something. You can also use this button here, which is called a flyout, and you can go down here to the bottom of this flyout menu and pick different brush windows. And for the assignment we're doing today, you're gonna need different brushes. I'm gonna start here with basic brushes, and then I just click and tell it OK. The last tool, I exited Photoshop. The last tool we want to use today is the Text tool, which is another few steps down here, and it is shown by the letter T. And it takes a second sometimes to spin up to load the fonts. But after I click the Text tool, you can see up here I get options for text. It's almost like using a word processor. So here we have options for the Text tool. And you can write things, again, it's just like using a word processor. So let's go ahead and start our project, okay? Here on my desktop, I have this piece of paper right here called samplelines.jpg. That's a JPEG. I'm going to double click this. And here is the image that we're going to work from. What we're going to do is you are going to use Photoshop to make an exact copy, or at least as close as you can. You're going to make a copy of this piece of paper. So I want to still be able to see the piece of paper here. I'm going to grab this and just kind of move it over here to one side. Now I'm going to go back here to Photoshop. Click it, and I want to make a new document in Photoshop. So I'm going to go up here to File, New, and I'm going to call this my last name, so you would use your last name. I can't spell. Sample lines, and call it number 1 because there's actually a sample lines 2 that we'll probably do next class. Then what I want here where it says preset, I want my preset to be US paper. And then it's going to automatically fill in a bunch of these different options. All this pre-filled stuff is fine. Size letter, width 8.5 by 11. This just makes a regular, like, standard size piece of, like, typing paper. That's what we want. So all these settings are fine. I'm going to go up here now and click OK. And here it'll build me my regular piece of paper. So the first thing, I clicked back now to the example. The first thing on the example is some text right here. There's a title up at the top. Photoshop sample lines. So let's start here back in Photoshop. Let's go ahead and use the text tool where I already am. I'm going to pick a font that I like. I don't like that one. I'm going to use, I want something pretty common. Oh no. Well, I don't like any of these fonts. Helvetica. There we go. Good old Helvetica. And now I'm going to type in what it says at the top. Photoshop sample lines. Looks like it's caps locked too. So I'm going to caps lock. And all I do is click on my paper once. See how I'm moving my little cursor right here? I'm just going to click, boom. It's pretty big, but I can change it later. And I'm going to type it in. Ooh, that's terrible. It's okay, we'll fix it. Photoshop sample lines. Now, what I have here is kind of a disaster of text. Yeah, this is not anything like what I want it to look like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here to my Move tool, my good old friend, the Move tool. And I'm going to start by, I can just grab this text and I can move it. Okay, that's starting to get better. But my next problem is my text is way too big. So I can go here, make sure when you use the Move tool that these two boxes are checked where it says Auto Select, Group, and Show Transform Controls right here. Because when I have the transform controls showing, I can grab a corner of my text like this. I can actually grab this and make it smaller. And now I can move it back over and look, this is starting to look more like I want. I'm going to make this a little bit thinner. That's probably pretty good. My last problem is obviously color. Over here is the color palette for Photoshop. Now before I can use it, I have to tell Photoshop that I'm done moving my text around. So I'm going to hit the return key on my keyboard. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to the text tool. And I'm going to, just like if I was editing text in a word processor, I'm going to highlight this text. Now I'm going to go over here to my color palette. I'm going to click this color because that is not the color I want. And I'm just going to drag down to black down there in the lower corner. Then I click OK. Now if I go back to my Move tool, look what I got. Black text, just like I wanted. It's not the exact same font as in the example, but it'll get the job done. Okay, so that's how you do your text. Now let's make some real lines. The first line we're supposed to make is called a 48-point normal brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my brush tool right here. I can either click the brush tool or I can hit the letter B. And this is a 48-point normal, which means mechanical. So I'm going to click the drop down and I'm going to look for one that says 48 point. I'm just scrolling through the list here And there it is. This is a hard mechanical 48. That'll do the job. So I'm going to click that brush. I want to make sure for today that all this stuff is normal. I want right here where it says opacity, I don't want it to be opaque. I don't want to be able to see through it. So I'm going to move that slider up to 100%. I also want my flow to be 100%. Now I'm ready to draw my line because it looks like in the example the line is black. And as you can see here in Photoshop, I look at my color right here. My color is already black. So I'm going to click on my document. Oop. Now what I'm going to do is just click, hold, and drag. There's my line. Not the straightest line I've ever drawn, but again, this is our first assignment. It'll do the job. Underneath that line, I'm going to label it. What do I call it? 48-point normal brush. Great. We know how to do text. So now let's do this one. I click the text tool. Yeah. I'm going to click underneath. And now it's actually going to look just like my old one, which is good. Click there. And you know what? This is huge. Let's go ahead and just make it smaller so we don't have to resize it. You can see up here where it says 72 point. I can actually click this and let's make this like a 14. That way I won't have to resize it again. And this is a 48. Ooh, that's really small. Well, we can always make it bigger. 48-point normal. Obviously, 14 is too small. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I don't want to make it too big. I'm going to be able to read it. And now I'm going to move it up so it's under my line, kind of like so. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit the return key to leave it where it is. Then I'm ready to go on to my next line. Now for this next line, it's also a normal line, except now it's red. So here I go. Oh, and it's a 12 point. So I'm going to go back to my brush tool. Now I'm going to click up here, and now I want a 12-point line. So I'll scroll up to find a 12. There it is, 12. But now I got to go over here to my color. I don't want this line to be black. It's supposed to be red. So I'm going to click the color picker. I'm going to click on a red, and you'll notice it's down here under black. I don't want that. I want red. So I'm going to find a good red, like so, and click OK. And now I can go ahead and draw another line. If it tells me this, it's saying, oh, no layers are selected. Oh, okay. I'm just going to go down here and click a layer. Really doesn't matter which one you click. Tell it okay. You get a lot of that in this project. Okay, now I can go and draw my red line. Ooh, that's a thin line. There you go. Now I'm ready to go back to my text tool. I want to make sure my color is still red. We decided 14 was a little small. Let's go a little bigger. Like a 24. And now I can type in my next text, which is, what is it? 12. Oh, that's pretty good size. Point normal. And now I've labeled my second line. What we're going to do for the rest of the project, you are going to continue making your own lines, going all the way down and picking, if we go back to the brush tool here, you're going to have to use this tool here and in the flyout to pick a bunch of different brushes to make all of these different lines. When you get all the way to the bottom, you gotta, you see here, you gotta do some different textured lines. You gotta label them all, and they have to be different colors. Try to get your colors as close to the colors that I used as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect, but try to get as close as you can. Okay? Okay, remember, you can always go back. You can watch the instructions on this video again in case you got lost. All right, do a good job, and let's get started.